So hello everyone. Welcome once again. This is Steve Taylor. I'm your host here at the Do It For Yourself podcast. Thanks again for joining us. If you have before, or this is your first time, welcome. So on today's episode, I have a good friend to talk about something that's really been coming up a lot for me lately. It's come out in prior podcasts, prior discussions, and I think it's something that's kind of going around and it's kind of out there, and a lot of people are seeing the value of this, the challenge of this, and everything. And the concept is in writing a book, right? And many people out there, how do you get started? What should you write about? Whatever it might be. But first and foremost, let me allow my guest to introduce herself. Tricia, please tell everyone who you are.
Hi, Steve. First of all, I'm really honored that you have asked me to be on your podcast. So I'm very excited. I am Tricia Brady, and I'm a business consultant in the financial services space. And I work with advisors pretty much across the country, helping them on the practice management side.
That's awesome. That's
And
awesome.
very excited to be talking about writing a book.
Yeah, this is cool, Tricia. So let me start by sharing a little personal story. So I'm a big reader. I love fantasy and sci-fi. And when my kids were little, I used to read to them stories, and I used to put voices on it, right? And I would read. I would be an ogre or whatever I might be. And eventually, I sat down and I said, you know what? Let me try to write a book. And I tried to write it kind of in real time, right? I was telling the kids the story, writing, and I was going through rewrites and everything, and it was such a challenge. But so that was what my personal experience about writing a book. It was an enjoyable thing. But a lot of the conversations and what you did was something different. It was writing this book about your professional expertise, what you do, what you've learned. You want to share what you've experienced with others out there to go to help. So if you can. How did this, idea of writing a book, how did it come about? I don't know if you kind of spearheaded this idea or whether someone came to you, but where did it come from? Why write a book?
Well, first of all, I've been in this space for a long time and really on the independent side and helping advisors make that transition to independence. And so, as I've worked with all the major aggregators and other spaces, I've been gathering information and resources that I know can help advisors. So, I had been thinking in my mind, how do I put this playbook together
Mhm.
and put a book that could be useful for those out there that are looking to go on their own? And then I was introduced to one of the advisors, not in my region that I work with, but had been actually started her own like production company and had been working with a lot of the different advisors. She's got all women advisors on her team. And then she started just thinking of ideas to put books out there. And so they had financial trendsetters and other books that they were doing. And one advisor will come up with an idea, or one person, of what they want to do. And then rather than doing it all on their own, they look and find other experts in that area, the book that they're looking to do, and get co-authors that want to join. So I had talked to Jessica, telling her that I was interested in writing this book on independence. And another woman who worked on a book previous to her um, had also had the idea. She does consulting, Cameo's her name, and she put the idea out there. So she is kind of the main one that said, okay, let's do this book. And then she reached out to a bunch of us that are in different aspects of that journey, right? So it could be the sales, the recruiting, the compliance, the marketing, consulting, in all those areas. And then we were all just told, let's write a chapter and figure out what we want to write. You have this amount of words that you can do, or pages. And the hardest part for me on that was I've gone through the whole journey and now I've got to write just a chapter. So how do I figure out what it is that I'm going to do in that chapter? And so that was the biggest struggle for me. But the good thing about this is I've wanted to write something, and now it's taken me through the editor, the process, and everything we have to go through, so that next time around I have a better idea of what I need to do when I'm going to write.
Really interesting. Most of the people I talk to when I think about it and I see out there, they write the book by themselves, right? It's
Hmm.
their book with all the
Yeah,
ideas, but this is different. I really love that idea that she came and said, I have this idea. Let me
yeah.
lean on my friends. How did that process go? Like when she reached out to you guys, when you got together, did she say, hey, I like you guys. I want you to write with me? Or does she come at you and say, hey, I think you would be really good on this specific topic? How did that go, kind of the group mind collected to decide that?
Yeah, actually, none of the people that are in the chapters, or some of us didn't even know each other. I still
Okay.
don't know everybody, right? And I think it was depending on what your expertise is. So
Hmm.
those that were compliance experts or leading response and marketing side or the recruiting, they know that that's their specific area and that's what they're going to write on. Cameo, who's kind of leading this, and myself are both consultants. So we cover all areas that are in there. So that was the hardest part for me, to just keep going back and forth and figuring out, okay, I started with a bunch of things and then trying to figure out how I can focus, not knowing exactly what everybody else is writing.
Uh-huh.
So we each write our own chapter and then send it to the editors, and we don't know what everybody else is writing. And then what happens is the editor will go through it, come back with whatever we need to make changes on. And then she goes through and looks at the different chapters and figures out the flow and how it all is going to go together, and then puts it all together as one book. And then Cameo kind of looks at that whole thing. And we actually haven't even seen the book as a whole yet. So I've only seen my chapter approved. I don't even know what section I'm going to fall in or how that's going to go
Uh-huh.
until the 30th of January. So
I love it. It's like very top
yeah,
secret. Everybody's kept in their own
yeah,
silo,
yeah.
to protect the innocent. So Trista, when I tried this in the past, like when I told you that little story with my kids, right? I just started writing, and then sometimes I thought about a business book, and I thought, like when I was in my previous life as a lawyer, I would write and I would give presentations, just outlines, and so then I would write like in an outline, and then I would fill in the outline. How did you get started? I think, right? Because a lot of people that go to write, there's the idea of writer's block, but it's kind of like just putting pen to paper or whatever. I don't know. You might, you probably
Hmm.
don't write. You
No,
probably
I
type
use
it.
yeah, I type.
Yeah, yeah. How did you go about that, and how did you keep yourself going? Because I'm sure, that's I think getting started in writing is just the hardest part.
Yeah, at first it was like, what is my title going to be? And it's women focused, right? So trying to
Hmm.
understand how I'm going to focus on women. So I started with Carrie Underwood and just, girl, just take the wheel.
Uh-huh.
And so the direction was, okay, just get out of your own way, take the wheel, and let's go and try to figure it out. And then I was trying to figure out how I can tie that to that. So I started just writing things that I have done and how I've helped people throughout, on the independent side. And then I'd say like 2 weeks later, I'm like, really, I don't know if I want Carrie Underwood. I said, I think I maybe, I don't know, 10 years, 15 years ago or whatever, when I was with American Scandia, that song, Just Dance by Leanne Womack came out,
Uh-huh.
where, you know what, just jump in, right? Don't sit on the sidelines. So I actually changed it to more of a dance and getting with the rhythm and making sure you have the right partners and all that. And so I tied it to the Just Dance, Embrace the Journey. And so I started to write my experience, and I'm like, oh, I don't know if people are really going to want to hear everything I have to say. And so then I started thinking about, who have I worked with, in the last few years, that are women that have gone through this process? And there were three advisors that I came up with, women advisors, that I reached out to them and I said, would you mind if I interviewed you, and just kind of went through the challenges and the things that you went through, and how I supported you through that. And so I ended up, interviewing, Janie and Logan and Megan, which are advisors within my regions or outside of the regions, actually, and just went through that. And then what I did is I tried to kind of intertwine that into my chapter. So I had like main themes, and then I took parts of their stories right into that, which helped me kind of, figure out how do I refine what I'm doing, because I don't want to start talking about compliance and then marketing and all these areas, because I only have a chapter, right? So
Right.
how do I condense it into one chapter, and what's the best way to do it? So honestly, I submitted it and I said, here it is. And then like a week later, I rewrote things again. I woke up in the middle of the night and I started making changes, and then I resubmitted it again. And I did that like 5 times because I never thought that it was the right way or the way I wanted it to be.
Yeah.
So it was really intimidating because, I mean, once I committed and said I was going to do it, I was like, okay, I got to do it now. And it took a while to figure out kind of the direction I was going to go in. And I think once I figured that out, then it was just easy to go back and forth and refine it.
Yeah, it's interesting that you found out and you went in that direction where you went and interviewed people because look at what I'm doing right now, right? As I've done my podcast,
Yeah.
it's all about interview format because I enjoy it. I enjoy asking questions. I enjoy learning about people, but there always is that natural part of whether you're podcasting or writing is like, I don't want to make this too much about me. I don't know that people are going to find me that interesting. But let me ask you, as the final product that came out, did you omit everything about your journey, or were you able to work in your aspects and your journey as well as these other ladies' journeys in there?
I worked in some of my aspects of my journey. I think not, I mean, me myself I haven't gone through the independence, but
Right.
as a woman in a male-dominated space, the things that
Yeah.
I had to go through, having children and going through that process and starting out in this space, um, at a time where it was very, very male focused, and there were certain things that women were treated a certain way and men were treated a different way. So it
Yeah.
was a good opportunity for me to kind of reflect and kind of think through kind of who I am and how I've evolved and how I work with others. And it's always been me wanting to make an impact and helping advisors grow, right? What in
Hmm.
any way it could be. But part of that too is trying to balance, like I said, I have 4 kids, and so balancing the motherhood and being part of everything that they're doing at the same time as moving through in my career and helping and where my passions are, right?
That's right. Yeah. Was that a stated goal when I believe you said Cameo or Cami brought
Cameo. Yeah.
Cameo when she brought everything together? Are all the authors women?
Yes.
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 So that was the
It's
goal. It
all
was going to
women.
be
Yep.
women written.
Yep. Yeah, and that's every book that they've put out. It's all been
Okay.
women. Yep. And just really trying to get our maybe our perception and the way that we see the world, right? How do we get other women to relate
Hmm.
and see that there's others out there that can help them, and here's some guidance, right? So like I said, they did the financial trendsetters. Now they just did rise and find, I think it is, and it's just going through the different aspects of your life as a woman and the things that you need to deal with, and that there's ways to grow through that and other women there to help you and empower you, right?
Let me ask this, Tricia. As you go through, because I had another guest on recently talking about marketing and writing the book, and really how you have to make it about the promise and what's the deliverable to the person out there that you're kind of writing it towards, right? As it goes through. So this is a very important topic. Strong, brilliant women came together, wrote about this important topic, and that's in writing a book in general. You want to define your target audience. So let me ask you, maybe obviously just to your chapter, not the others.
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel that even those beyond non-women,
Yes.
others,
Oh,
would
yeah.
they
I
find
think
it beneficial? Yeah,
I
yeah.
think that
Talk about
everybody,
that a little
yeah,
bit.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, I didn't go in and say it's just directed to women, right?
Right.
I mean, everybody goes through the same process. When you're looking to go to independent, you want to be your authentic self, right? You want to make sure that they hear your voice. You're not being dictated by some other guidelines, right?
Hmm.
You need to have empathy, right? Women might tend to have more empathy and they can relate to clients and understand clients' needs. But there's a lot of men out there that have it too, right? And
Yeah.
then it's resilience. I mean, there's a lot of things once you decide you want to go out on your own, there's a lot of challenges out there, right? And you can't feel like you're defeated right away. So it's just making sure that you have that resilience. You can push through the challenges, whether it's compliance or that it's the org design or it's the expenses or whatever it is that's in your way, or you can't market the way you want to market, right? So how is it that you're pushing through in that resilience and being able to come through the other end with something extraordinary that you've been able to build on your own and push through, right? And biggest part of that too is having that network or that tribe, right, of
Hmm.
people that you can count on and that can support you through that, and to know that you're not alone, right? There's
Yeah.
other people out there that can help you. They've gone through it too. And I think this is to help people see, yeah, you might have certain challenges. There's certain things you're going to have to face, but we've all been there too. And this is kind of the way we've done it. And, read and learn from here, but also reach out and lean on others that have gone through that process that could help you.
Yeah, that's really, I think that's a great point. A lot of people, when they go to market and they're trying to develop a niche and talk about it, realize that if you're giving valuable content and experience to that niche and talking about it, others will find value in that as well, right? Even though you're speaking about this, your book was primarily you interviewed women, it was written by women. Hey, men, there's a lot to learn from that. I was raised by women, so I very much appreciate it. They're so much smarter, harder working
Mhm.
than the men in general. And so, don't be afraid to go, to start on a specific topic or talk about that or build your content because others will really will find value in that. And so, as you go through, you've written your chapter, you've put it out there. I don't want you to give us all that's in there. Hopefully, those that are interested can go out and buy it. But you said that as you were going through and you were re-exploring, right, what you've learned and what you've done. And you've mentioned it a couple of times, you've mentioned is resilience, but that might not be your answer. It might be something else that as you went and you wrote it and now you came out at the end. What would you say, having gone through this process, is something maybe that you either learned new about yourself or that you reminded yourself, hey, I'm pretty great or awesome because of A, B, C. Let's not forget that.
For me personally, I mean,
Yeah, absolutely.
I will say there are a lot of times where you start to doubt yourself, right? Even though I've been for 3 decades now, really working with advisors and helping, um, there are times where you're not sure if everything you're doing is the best way or the right way to do things. I think that for me, the best part of this was to share what I've put together with Janie and Megan and Logan and let them see what came out of it and how proud they were of me and how appreciative that I included them. And I think when you're putting a book like this out there, you want to make sure it's people can relate to it, right? You're not just putting things out there because you want to send out the facts and let them know. You want them to see themselves in the story
Hmm.
and be able to relate. And just to hear and the smiles, and even I had Janie on. I actually put her in one of my LinkedIn posts as we were having our interview and conversation. They just love to be out there, and I think being able to show others that it's possible and it's something that they can do, because people are really afraid to just make that first step, right?
Yeah.
And I think that I have something in there that I can really get it out of people and help them move forward, really inspires me to try to do it more.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, Tricia, like you say, like maybe you've been in the business, you haven't necessarily gone and done your own business, but you created something from nothing. You didn't know how to start, and you built it and you did it. So it's very similar to the journey of someone they're doing it on their own. And I think what's
Mm-hmm.
what's important that you shared is that when you were starting, it was nerve-wracking. I didn't know where to start. You reached out to other people for help, and guess what?
Mm-hmm.
They couldn't have been
It all
happier.
came together.
It
Yeah.
all comes together, right? And that's all of us. I think a lot of us, when we go, whether it's financial advising, whatever it might be, when you go out on your own, there's people out there that want to help you. And just think about it. Like in your Rolodex, just go to them and they will help you to see that you're doing something so brave. So don't forget that, right? You're never alone in anything here that you do.
Yeah. And you don't want to be alone, right? And everybody wants to help each other lift them up. And I think just don't be afraid. Yeah, don't be afraid to ask because
Yeah.
everybody wants to help. It just makes us each better, right?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So, let's dive a little bit into, kind of what your, the book, the topic, what your experience and the like. That I'm very passionate about this idea of doing it for yourself. Look at the name of the podcast, right? That's why I've been here. But I know it's not for everybody, and I think it's really hard for some people initially to determine, right, that hey, we'll do our business, right? Our industry, or you're working at a large firm, wherever it might be. I wonder if I'm cut out to do this on my own, to go independent, right? To really, I think I am, but I'm not certain. So, somebody initially, reaches out to you and say, "Hey, Tricia, hey, I'm just in general, I'm thinking about it, right?" What do you talk to them about? How do you help them to determine of whether this going independent in whatever form that looks, whether that's right for them or not?
For me, what I do first is I want to understand what their situation is currently,
Hmm.
right? What does your office look like? How are you structured? What are your challenges? Why is it that you think you want to go independent? And then we'll walk through that. If they're with a broker dealer and they feel like there's just too many restrictions or there's stuff there that they just feel like they can't do, or they feel like they're losing too much of their revenue because they're paying that out, right? And they think that the dollar amount is what's important to them. I might say, as I learn about how their office is structured and what's happening there, that it may or may not be the right decision for them because they might just want to be an advisor and they don't realize now they've got all these other hats, right? They've got HR, they've got compliance, they're running the office, they're paying for everything, right? And they don't really want to deal with all that. So I'm like, what is it that are those biggest pain points for you? And let's make sure that it makes sense. And it might not be completely breaking away. It might be just finding something in between where there's somewhere you're going to get a little bit more flexibility and maybe it's a hybrid or it's something else. And, I'd say 75% of the time, it makes sense for them to maybe go on and do something on their own
Hmm.
because they've got the right structure in place, they've got the right whys and the right mindset for what they're going to be doing. They kind of understand what they're going to be walking into. And then there's the other percent that it's like they just think they want to get more money, but then once they do it, and then sometimes they've done it, and they're like a year into it and they've had to deal with the compliance and deal with all these things. They're like, well, I guess it wasn't as bad as I thought it was where I was before, because it wasn't like they were looking for more flexibility to do different types of investing and different things, different marketing, different things
Hmm.
that they couldn't do. It was just the money that was bothering them.
Yeah.
But now they've taken on all the other responsibilities. So I'll just kind of go through and I'll vet with them kind of what's their current situation, why is it that they think they want to make a change, what are their challenges, and then I'll go through and just kind of explain what the next steps are and what they might need to be doing. And then I'll refer them to legal compliance, friendly broker dealers if they have some insurance or annuity business or legacy business, or those that they can just transition to advisory. They just don't want to have any more commission business at all. And they might sit on it for months and sit on it and think about it and talk to other people, and then they come back to me maybe like 3 months later,
Right.
and then we'll just start walking through the steps, and then I'm helping them with their documents and with everything that they need to do to move forward. And then where I work today, I'll even help them through like the selling agreement process and just kind of be that sounding board for them as they're
Hmm.
going through the entire process. Um, and so it's been, for me, it's good to see when they've started here and it's probably a year later that they've finally moved over, and just helping them and knowing that I'm there to support them whenever they need it.
Yeah.
It's very fulfilling for me.
Yeah.
I have a very passionate on that side. Yes.
That's
And
awesome.
I myself am a former COO, CCO for a multi-billion RIA, and I had my own practice management consulting firm. So I helped advisors for a while. I worked with all three of the major aggregators in the space. So there's a lot
Hmm.
of things and challenges that I've seen. So as I talk to them, I can share some of the things that I've seen before and give them some guidance. And I might know some of the people of where they are and where they might be going that I can help them. And one broker dealer or one place might not be the right fit for one, but another one that might be just kind of in the middle, it might be a better fit for them. So it's
Yeah.
not like I'm picking one over the other. I'm just trying to figure out who they are and how I can help them.
Yeah, that's great. And the big part of it, like you mentioned before, is when anyone starts to go out to do something on their own or for themselves or in a different way. they focus and they think about a lot about, well, I have these relationships, I have these existing structures and support in place that as I go to do it somewhere, whether I'm switching from one company to another or doing that on my own, I'm going to lose those, right? I'm going to
Mhm.
lose those. I don't know what I'm going to get to replace that. How do you help and guide them through that? Because I'll be honest, when you go and start your own RIA, as I did about 5 years ago, and you leave that mothership, it could be lonely. It could be really lonely. You're trying to figure it out. You're listening to podcasts. You're reading books. You're doing all this different stuff, right? What do you tell them about that aspect of it? About whether that yeah, you're leaving a community, but there's potential other options to build their new community.
Yeah, that's the scariest thing, and it's all the time. You don't know what you don't know, and that's always the conversation that you're having. Um, for where I am today, I talk to so many that are in that stage. They've already transitioned or they're in the process of transitioning. So I always give them names and contact information, and plenty of the advisors that I work with are so happy to talk to others. Um, and then I work with a lot of like the aggregator type RIA firms too within my where I work, and then from previous lives too. So there's always opportunities when they're going through and they're thinking about it. I'm always telling them, okay, here's a list of 5 or 6 people that you can reach out to. They'd be happy to talk to you, share ideas, share challenges they had. Even here's some documents that we've already created that you don't have to start from scratch, and we can help you go through that process. You're not alone. And I'm always trying to connect people with each other so they can share. I mean, even like one of the women that I had in my chapter, Logan, that I talked to, I introduced her to you, or you guys talked to each other. Marketing was a question, right? Or Celine, she does marketing. And I just, if I know certain people that are doing certain things and they do it well, how do I connect those dots so that I can help them and they know that they can lean on others? Because, like I said before, you're just making people better. You're not giving away necessarily that secret sauce. You're learning from each other.
Yeah, and I was, to your mention that when I saw the name Logan, right, and I was like, oh, I remember her. We had that conversation, and honestly, I was happy. I was excited. I was like, oh yeah, she did it. Let me reach out. Let me see how it's going,
Yeah.
right? To that point, once again, once you reach out to other people that have been there and walked down that path, they're so happy to turn around and help them. Especially like you can be very similarly situated. Logan and I were both attorneys, right? So we think
That's what made my connection there. Yep, yep.
we think a certain way, right? And that's always very very helpful. So I think this has been really great, Tricia, and about your process and how you went through and you wrote this book. Let me ask this. Now that you've written it, right? And I think my wife has written a book as well, a process of getting out of character for actors and non-actors.
Yeah.
Now that and as she was doing it, I think, and you learned as well that the value of having an editor is that if you don't get a deadline, you're going to keep tweaking this thing forever.
Yep.
So now that you've gotten a taste of it, you've written a chapter. Do you feel there's probably always more to be said, or do you feel like you'd like to do this again, to do another book?
Yeah, the next one, I want to do my book that I wanted to do, and that would be my own. Like I said, I want to do that just playbook on going independent,
Uh-huh.
and more like a work, yeah, going through each of the steps and giving the tools and the resources for each of those steps that you can help. I've kind of outlined it.
Hmm.
And I'll probably lean on the editor and Jessica and the team there next. I'm not sure when it's going to happen, but that will definitely. And then she might have another book that comes out, and these same authors, or like different groups of them, go into the next book. I mean, they did Divorce Decoded. They've done all different ones. So there's, I'm sure, 3 or 4 other ones that are on the radar that are coming up that I'd be happy if there's something that I can contribute to it. Would love to be part of that again.
So this is just the beginning. I love it.
This is just the beginning. And you know what, for you, what Jessica does with each of these books, that's her next season of her podcast. So she does each chapter as an interview
Hmm.
for each season. So maybe you need to get some books out there or use Susie's book.
Yeah.
and,
No, I'm
and
thinking
start
about
getting
it.
some podcast episodes. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm thinking about it. Kitsis had he had someone talking about a book there recently, and I had another marketer. Now I'm talking to you, and like I said, I've always been thinking about it. And I tried my hand at kind of sci-fi fantasy. I think I'm going to do it, but the question I ask you, like I would like, and Susie did this as well, right? And then she's come back and she said, I'm not really sure. But I would love to hear more about your individual story, right? Like put more of you in there because I would
Yeah.
say that's compelling. That moves me, other people's stories, right? So as I look to put this together, I have a lot of story in my life and hopefully more to come.
Oh, yeah.
So I don't know if I want to make it more of that or necessarily subject matter. So that's what I'm grappling with. But I think like you, maybe I'll reach out to some friends and we'll do like a collective
Hmm.
together. That's a great idea.
Yeah, I will say when I started this chapter, because you have to put information. At first, I didn't even put anything in my about myself in the intro, and I was like, "Oh, well, I got to figure out how I got here to begin with." So that was added after I started doing the interviews in the chapter. But
Uh-huh.
for me too, I was a Navy brat. I've adjusted a lot. I've had so many different hats as CCO, compliance, relationship management, consulting, just trying to bring all of that together, and share and help as I'm going through and try to bring it into each of those stories. But that's true. Trying to find the balance of how much is too much about me versus the story you're trying to tell, right? And how do you
Yeah.
combine that together?
Yeah, it's interesting. So I'm going to, you give me a lot to think about, and hopefully people out there listening to this who are thinking about a book, this is a different way to do it. And I love hearing your process, what you did and what might come in the future. So Tricia, let me ask you this, as we wrap up here, and you've been doing this a long time and you have your passion for specifically, for helping people go independent, for helping women going independent. I have a lot of female advisor friends, some that have gone out on their own, others that have not. But if you can put a message out there, if a woman thinking about going independent is listening here, what would kind of be your best word of advice or your best words of encouragement, that they're listening to you when they're thinking about this?
I'd say it's trust your instincts and surround yourself with the right support system, right? It doesn't mean you're doing it alone, like we said before. It means building something on your terms with the resources and guidance, right? I want them to be bold, be authentic,
Uh-huh.
um, and don't be afraid to take that first step, right? The rewards are worth it. So know that you have a tribe, right? There's people around there that are going to support you, and just believe in yourself, right? That it's going to work itself out.
That's awesome.
Just
I
don't be
love
afraid to
that.
take that first step.
Yeah. So when it comes out, by the time this comes out, we're going to have all the information on your book. We'll put links and everything there for anybody that wants to learn more about you and the book and everything. But Tricia, thanks so much. This has really been a great conversation. I've learned a lot, and I hope anybody listening does as well.
Oh, thank you so much for including me, and it was great. Hopefully, people come out and our launch party, like I said, I mean, this is going to be already passed, but a lot of the proceeds are going to a young woman in California that's interested in this space. So go out and get the book.
Awesome. Thanks, Tricia.
Thank you. Great to see you.